Okay, this is going to be the first part of the Into Darkness Enterprise build log update number 18. It's probably going to be made up of little chunks throughout the next couple of days, or I might just try to throw something up tonight. We'll see. First thing you should notice is those shapes that I painted last night, I have repainted. Just didn't like that color, and that's the nice thing about paint is if you don't like it, you can paint over it. And I did. I went over it with a beige to lighten them up considerably. Still a little bit off. It's still a little bit too yellow for my taste, so I'm going to try one more thing before I give up on the color altogether. But I need to get on with the getting on and try work on some other areas before I get too hung up on that one spot. I can always come back to it later. And what I'm doing is sanding down the red putty. You'll notice that these, if you could compare it to the last video, these lines where the red putty are much less wide or thick or anything else than they used to be. I had red spot putty on them all night and let it get good and dry overnight. And I came back in with some files, some sandpaper, and sanded it down and knocked down some high spots. Now what I want to do next is to go back to that basic gray paint that I used, not the primer paint, but the first level above that, which is that light undercoat gray. And I'm just going to spray those areas very gently. I'll mask off areas I don't want to get paint on, but spray those on and get those seams cleaned up. And then I'll rebuild the pattern on top of them. But first thing to do, and also while I'm at it, and I've got that light undercoat gray, I'm going to mask off these areas here and probably the tops of these, and do some of the spraying that painting that normally would have been covered with the decals. I'm going to go ahead and do it with spray paint while I've got it out. Okay, and here's tonight's work. I've decided I'm going to try to paint the gray on the fins and the stripes and the main pennant and all of those types of things. I found a good gray that I like, and that's the same color as this gray you're seeing here, which is Milwaukee Road Gray. It's one of the grays that I used in the preliminary mix. And I'm going to try something different. The question is, how do you know the best way to mask something negatively so that all four of your masks will match? And the secret is, I think, to put a positive shape down first, put your other perimeter mask around it, and then remove the positive shape. I think this will all make sense in a minute. First thing I did was to blatantly scan the decals that came with the ship, since I don't plan on using a lot of them. I just scanned them and then traced the overall shapes. But let me put the positive shape in place and then show you what I'm talking about. This is where the gray decals go on the two fins, on the insides of these two fins. Now that I know where the decal would go, now that I know where the what needs to be painted gray, I'm going to take the negative version of just the inside. Obviously I don't need the whole thing, but just the inside, and line it up against this shape. Right, line it up against this shape, so that when I remove this piece, I will have the correct profile for what needs to be painted. We'll proceed to step 2, and we'll continue to see if this makes any sense. Okay, here's that bottom piece lined up against the original, or the piece I put down first. Now what I'm going to do is take this outer piece off. Now that should give me the appropriate spot that needs to get painted gray. Let's see, we'll try this out on the rest of them, see how it looks. The templates are in place. They were taped around. I'm trying simply on one nacelle first, and if that works, then I'll go ahead and do the other. But I wasn't going to tape them all up and have this experiment fail, so I've got them all taped off, and I sprayed them for a second ago, and now I'm going to start removing tape to see how it looks after it's dried.
Let's get a hold of the pageant consultant. Let's get a list of all the photographers that Amber's had sessions with. One of them might be our blackmailer.
Okay, that all looks good. Let me remove this one.
Why didn't you just tell me? Give me an idea of why I've taken so much. With that hairstyle, it must be 6 months ago. I'll have to check my calendar.
Okay, that looks nice.
So you first talked to the pageant girls when Amber was closest to. Did you tell them about the photos either?
She probably thought they'd use it against you. You don't want it, right?
Sir, I have no idea what to get your money.
Still no luck on the good. Keep coming up, Randy. The best thing to give the woman is something she thought she wanted when she didn't think you were listening. What if I wasn't listening? Gift certificate?
Second.
According to a pageant consultant, Amber was in the city about 6 months ago for a photo shoot.
Okay. It's about as much as I can do with one hand. Let me try to take some of the stuff off with, put the camera down and remove the rest. Okay, not so bad. Definitely a lighter color than the decals, which is the whole reason I was shooting for this, was because I did not like those glaring decals, and I can do a little bit of white paneling over top of those to further knock them down. But yeah, that'll work just fine. Given the success of this, I can go ahead and do the rest of this nacelle and then do the other one. I've got the side stripes, I've got that big area up here. Yeah, I think that's going to work nicely. And I think that'll be it for tonight's report.